make it go wild. I'm original, and I told you so. I'm a kid in the candy store with the leather on the denim. I ain't the cure, I'm the venom. If you wanna find me, find the taillight. Something's coming in, you're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink. Get ready.
Magandang araw po sa inyo mga kabansa. Eto na po tayo, episode 236 dito sa Ang Maestro over the Katipunan channel. At ngayong araw na ito ay malalaman ninyo kung bakit ako'y nakabalabal lang ganito. Ako po'y maginaw po dito kasi sa studio at ayoko lang mag-jacket. So anyway, mga kabansa, eto tayo. At pag tinignan natin ang ating mundo ngayon ay ito ho ang magiging pamagat ng ating episode. Nakakatakot na pagbabago ng mundo. From trade to hot wars. Ayan po mga kabansa. Ha? At di nga ba nakakatakot? Mula po noong magkutsa-kutsa ba ang mga North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries sa pagbubuyo ng Estados Unidos at recruit siya ng recruit ng mga miyembro dati ng Warsaw Pact. Alam po ninyo, nung bitawan ni sino na nga ba yan? Gorbachev, no? Nung bitawan ni Gorbachev ang Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, lahat po ng mga miyembro niyan ay nakapirma sa Warsaw Pact. Dahil sa Warsaw, Poland, ginawa ang pagtatayo ng USSR. At si Gorbachev po, no? At si Reagan ay nagkasundo na abolish na ang Cold War. Alright. No? At ang Russia naman ay binuwag ang USSR at nagtayo na ng sarili niyang Russian Federation. Ayan mga kabansa. At lahat ng mga membro ng Warsaw Pact ay binitawan na niya. Wala nang girian between two major superpowers. Yan ang usapan. Pero mga kabansa, habang lumalaon ang panahon, hindi naman binuwag ng Estados Unidos ang North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So, bukod tangi, nagre-recruit pa sila ng mga members ng NATO at nahalata ng Russia na pinalilibutan na siya ng mga NATO countries, mga kabansa. At ang huling punto na tinolerate ng Russia ay ang pagiging independyente ng Ukraine dahil Ukraine po ang nakasuso sa pusod ng Russia, Western Russia, nakatutok ang Eastern Ukraine. At alam po ninyo, yung Ukraine ang dinevelop ng Russia sa eastern side niya, no? Mula sa Donbas region pababa hanggang Crimea, dinevelop po niya yan to be the war industrial complex. And the industrialization of Russia was downstream to eastern Ukraine. Samantalang ang western Ukraine, which remains to be the European face of the country, was primarily agricultural. At yan po ang food basket naman, at yan ang gagaling halos majority ng wheat during that time that is being consumed by the world. But in 2014, nang-intriga po ang Amerika at nagkaroon ng Orange Revolution. Parang yung yellow EDSA revolution dito sa atin, kung saan pinatalsik ang pro-Russian president. At ito po ay pinalitan ng pro-NATO president. At dyan nagsimula. Maya nagigiriya. So, medyo pumalag mga kabansa ang Crimea dahil ang Crimea ay nung panahon lamang ni Khrushchev, mga kabansa, yan napunta sa Ukraine. Yan po talaga ay teritoryo ng Russia. At nung panahon ni Khrushchev, ni Nikolai Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev, ay napunta sa Ukraine. At noong 2014, umalis po ang Crimea sa Ukraine at nag-join siya ng Russian Federation. Samantalang yung eastern section ng Ukraine, from the Donbas region, nandiyan po ang pababa dyan hanggang makarating na Odessa, mga kabansa, pababa. Bababa po yan ng Shaporia, bababa po yan ng Kherson, and then we will end with Odessa. Maintained to be difficult for the Western Ukraine. So, after many years of bombing, mga kabansa, many years of bombing, in fact, 8 years, hindi naman tumitigil ang Western Ukraine from bombing the Donetsk region, the Donbas region. At noong 12 to 14,000 na namamatay, ay na-aggravate pa ito ng deklarasyon na ang Ukraine ay nag-iisip mag-join ng NATO. Kaya in 2022, mga kabansa, in order to protect the Donbas region and the Russians in the eastern Ukraine area, dahil wala silang depensa sa pag-atake ng Ukraine backed up by NATO, pinasok ng Russia ang Ukraine at ngayon ay halos lahat ng eastern Ukraine ay kontrolado na ng Russia. At nandiyan po, and we saw that this made a lot of changes in the world. Nandiyan yung pagbubomba, pagsira ng Nord Stream. Yung pong oil and gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. Pinasabog po yan ng di umano ay Ukrainian NATO-US conspiracy. At ngayon mga kabasa, natatalo na si Zelensky at wala na halos gustong tumulong sa kanya sa West and Eastern Europe dahil hindi naman niya maipakita na maipapanalo niya ang gera. At pangalawa, naghihirap na po ang Eastern European economy. In the face of all this, mga kabansa, dito naman sa ating banda ay meron tayong problema sa South China Sea dahil inuudyo naman tayo ng Amerikano na sundutin ang puwit ng dragon na China. At dito naman ay may konting angisan, mga kabansa, angasan. So meron din dito problema. But in the face of all this, China's been so far clean slate. Wala siyang problema. China is not in any war and all that stuff. It is in the economic area that China is performing. Pero dito sa paglunsad niya ng mga electric vehicles, nakakaroon siya ng problema sa trade at isa sa mga binanata ng China ay ang canola exports ng Canada sa China. Tingnan po natin ang video.
A week after Ottawa slapped tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles, steel and aluminum, Beijing is now launching an anti-dumping investigation into Canadian canola imports.
The trade relationship between Canada and China has reached a critical juncture, with recent developments threatening to upend long-standing economic ties between the two nations. On October 1, 2024, Canada implemented a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles, followed by a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum products, set to take effect on October 15, 2024. These measures, aligned with similar actions taken by the United States and the European Union, have provoked a swift and potentially damaging response from Beijing.
We will be introducing a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles and a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau justified the tariffs by stating, "Actors like China have chosen to give themselves an unfair advantage in the global marketplace, compromising the security of our critical industries and displacing dedicated Canadian auto and metal workers. So, we're taking action to address that." The Canadian government argues that these measures are necessary to protect domestic industries from China's state-directed policy of overcapacity and oversupply, as well as its perceived lack of rigorous labor and environmental standards. The new tariffs apply to a wide range of Chinese-made EVs, including electric and certain hybrid passenger automobiles, trucks, buses, and delivery vans. The 100% tariff is in addition to the existing most favored nation import tariff of 6.1% that will continue to apply to EVs produced in China and imported into Canada. This move brings Canada in line with the United States, which quadrupled its tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100% in May 2024, and the European Union, which imposed duties of up to 36.3% on Chinese-made EVs. China's reaction to Canada's tariffs was immediate and forceful. The Chinese Commerce Ministry announced plans to launch an anti-dumping investigation into Canadian canola imports, a move that could have severe repercussions for Canada's agricultural sector. China has historically been the largest buyer of Canadian canola seed, with exports valued at $3.47 billion in 2023. The ministry stated that Canadian canola exports to China have increased significantly, while prices have continued to fall, suggesting that Canadian exporters were suspected of dumping products into the Chinese market.
In the rush to get the golden crop out of the ground, news of China targeting Canadian canola imports is the last thing farmers say they needed to hear.
So this is a big hit to Saskatchewan producers and to all canola producers in the country. It will be a massive hit to us.
Canada is the world's largest canola exporter. More than half of its seeds go to China, where the grain is used for cooking oil and renewable fuels. A trade relationship worth more than $5 billion last year. In a statement read by state media, the Chinese Commerce Ministry made it clear its investigation into Canadian canola imports and some Canadian chemical products is in response to what Beijing considers to be a discriminatory move by Ottawa.
A spokesperson for China's Commerce Ministry said Canada's move will disrupt the stability of global industrial and supply chains and seriously undermine economic and trade rules. Beijing's foreign ministry spokesperson added that China would take all measures necessary to safeguard its economy.
Hindi lamang mga kabansa, hindi lamang Canada na problema, no? Dahil alam nyo naman yung canola, Canada is one of the major exporters niya, no? Ay paano na yan? Ang magiging cost daw is about $2 per acre, no? So medyo maliit kung pakikinggan nyo, pero sa volume na mawawala mga kabansa sa Canada, ay ito ay magkakaroon ng tantrums ang agricultural sector dyan. Kasi alam nyo naman, yung tinatawag na supply chain, dugtong-dugtong yan. Pero hindi lamang Canada na problema, mga kabansa. Hindi lang Canada namumblema. Pati dito sa baboy, no? Ha? Ay nagkakaproblema na rin. At ang tatamaan naman dito sa reduction of pork exports to China ay ang European Union, at yung pong volume nila ay mukhang lilipat papunta Russia. Ayan. So, pakita mo nga itong slide na ito na may masarap na, ayan, mga kabansa, no? So, panoorin natin ang video.
China is the world's largest consumer of pork, importing vast quantities annually to meet domestic demand. Market estimates value China's pork import market at approximately $3.5 billion. Historically, European Union pork producers have dominated this market, capturing around 51% of the share. However, shifts in the international trade landscape are gradually eroding this dominance. Until this year, EU countries, particularly Spain, Denmark, and the Netherlands, led the Chinese pork market. Spain alone accounted for about 21% of the market share. The EU pork industry not only led in volume, but also maintained high product quality and a stable supply chain, making it a primary supplier for China. Nevertheless, escalating Sino-EU trade tensions are steadily undermining this leading position. In July this year, the EU announced a temporary tariff of up to 37.6% on electric vehicles imported from China, disrupting the economic balance between the two regions. In response, the Chinese government swiftly implemented retaliatory measures, launching anti-dumping investigations on pork imports from Denmark, the Netherlands, and Spain. This move not only rattled the EU internally, but also posed unprecedented challenges to EU pork producers who have long relied on the Chinese market. Following China's announcement of the anti-dumping investigations, the EU reacted swiftly and strongly. Spanish government officials promptly voiced their concerns, committing to collaborate with EU counterparts to prevent tariffs on their pork products. Spanish Minister of Economy and Trade, Carlos Cuerpo, stated that Spain and the EU are striving to find a balance to avoid a trade war while protecting their products. He emphasized, just as we cannot have a trade war, we also cannot engage in a subsidy race. We are seeking solutions through the EU that allow us to move forward without harming the industry. Additionally, Spanish Agriculture Minister Luis Planas expressed hope for mutual understanding and negotiation to avoid tariffs on agricultural products and foodstuffs. Furthermore, industry associations in France and Denmark voiced their apprehensions. And Richard, president of the French Pork Exporters Association, remarked, "We are currently considering the questions we will be asked and how we must respond." She highlighted that China accounts for 18% of France's pork export revenue and lamented that, given the cheaper meat exports from Brazil and the United States, France has already struggled with competitiveness in pork exports, which is now exacerbated by the new measures. Similarly, the Danish Agriculture and Food Council warned that restrictions on European meat imports by China would severely impact Denmark's pork industry and called for solutions. Meanwhile, China has reduced pork imports from France and Chile, both significant exporters within the EU. Recent data show that pork imports from France decreased by 12% and Chile by 10%. Additionally, imports from the Netherlands fell by 7% and from the United States by 3%, indicating an accelerating trend towards diversification in China's pork import market. In stark contrast, Russian pork producers have seized this market opportunity. Konstantin Kovalyev, head of the Russian National Pork Association, revealed that Russia aims to capture 10% of China's pork import market within the next 3 to 4 years.
Mukhang namamayani po ang China, no? Dahil na-concentrate siya sa ekonomiya at ang kanyang filosofiya is really to be able to assist the global south. Sino po yung tinatawag natin na global south? Yung po tinatawag natin na global south, yan po yung mga mahihirap na mga bansa, no? At nandyan sila sa Pinakamarami sa kanila nasa Africa, nasa Latin America, and basically in Asia also there are some. Gusto niyang tulungan yan at kaya ni-revive niya yung kanyang Belt and Road Initiative, which is a revival of the old Silk Road of the past, where from China all the way to Eurasia, mga kabansa, ay gumawa siya ng Silk Road. Hindi ba yan nabasa pa natin dyan, no? Yung mga travails ni Marco Polo. At yan po ay merong maritime component sa dagat naman kung saan natin nakilala si Sheng Hui, si Admiral Sheng Hui. Hindi ko kilala si Admiral Sheng Hui. Aba, ay napanood nyo na ba yung The Voyages of Sinbad? Yan po si Admiral Sheng Hui. Si Sinbad po yan na sailor. Okay. Kasi ang kanyang pangalan, kung siya'y bata pa, ay Sinbao. No? So, in fact, nung magpunta si Sheng Hui sa Sulu, naiwan niyang acquaintances doon, ay kilala siya sa palayaw niyang Sinbao. Kaya naman sa Middle East, no, nagkaroon ng Sinbad the Sailor. Ay, my goodness, ito pong sponsor ng mga liberal democracy, no, itong Amerika. So, tinamaan ang Canada, tinamaan ang European Union, at of course, hindi na natin tinalakay dito kung paano natamaan ng Australia, dahil nakarecover na yung Australia. Ay ngayon po, ito, pakita natin itong slide na ito. China naman po, binitawan utang ng Amerika. No? Mga kabansa. Ano ang ibig sabihin niyan? Ang Amerika po ay nag-i-issue yan ng treasury bills, no? Katumbas ng utang nila. And there was a time na hawak ng China 1.4 trillion ng utang ng Estados Unidos. Pero a few years ago, pinenta na ho niya yung 500 billion. So it now stands at 1.4 minus 500. No? So it's about 800 to 900 billion na lamang po ay nagbenta na naman, nag-unload na naman, nag-liquidate na naman ang China. So lumalabas po number 1 ngayon na may hawak ng treasury bills ng Amerika ay Japan na. Ano ang implikasyones nito? Pakinggan po natin ang video.
The global financial landscape is undergoing a significant transformation, with China's recent billion-dollar sell-off of the U.S. Treasury securities following the Federal Reserve's rate cut serve as a notable indicator of this shift.
Since the end of 2023, China is increasing its sales of U.S. government debt. This chart shows that in 2011, June, China held 14% of all U.S. government debt outstanding, and they've been tapering off since. In the first quarter of this year, 2024, China sold another $53 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds. It's likely now that the UK is the second biggest foreign lender to the United States government. China is explicitly not going to be buying Treasury bonds in the future. They almost certainly took a loss on the bonds they sold in the first quarter of 2024 just to get rid of them. If they're dumping them in quarter 1, they're not going to be buying more, so China's out.
This development is not an isolated incident, but rather a manifestation of broader de-dollarization trends that have been gaining momentum in recent years. The dominance of the US dollar in the global financial system, a status quo established in the aftermath of World War II, is facing unprecedented challenges. An increasing number of countries are actively seeking alternatives to the dollar, primarily due to Washington's propensity to weaponize its currency for geopolitical purposes. The freezing of $300 billion in assets belonging to Russia's central bank and the seizure of foreign exchange reserves from Venezuela, Iran, and Afghanistan have heightened concerns among nations about potential targeting by the U.S. government. This apprehension has catalyzed a wave of de-dollarization efforts, particularly among major economies. China and Russia have been at the forefront of this movement, significantly reducing their reliance on the dollar in bilateral trade. As of April 2024, over 90% of trade settlements between these two nations are conducted using their local currencies, the Chinese renminbi and the Russian ruble. This shift represents a dramatic departure from traditional dollar-denominated transactions. The de-dollarization trend is not limited to U.S. adversaries. Brazil, under the leadership of President Lula da Silva, has entered into an agreement with China to conduct trade in their respective local currencies. Lula has been particularly vocal on this issue, advocating for de-dollarization globally and criticizing U.S. economic policies that target developing countries in the global south. He has specifically condemned U.S.-dominated financial institutions, like the International Monetary Fund, for trapping developing countries in unpayable debt. Even long-standing U.S. allies are exploring alternatives. Saudi Arabia, a pivotal player in global oil markets, has engaged in discussions with China regarding oil sales denominated in yuan rather than dollars. During President Xi Jinping's visit to Riyadh in 2022, agreements were signed with Gulf countries and the Arab League, outlining plans for China to import oil and gas from the Persian Gulf region using yuan.
At ito po, mga kabansa, kalalabas lang kagabi itong video na ito. Ano ang nangyayari? Aba, ay dahil po doon sa inyong napanood na marami ng bansa ngayon, hindi na kasi dati, ang Pilipinas po kasi, no? Peso, ano ba, bibili ng langis. Peso, dadaan sa dollar, bago pa pumunta sa reals ng Saudi Arabia. Aba, marami po ngayon, narinig nyo naman, diretso na sila. No? At pati ang Saudi Arabia, diretso na sa yuan, hindi na dumadaan sa dolyar. Ang Brazil, hindi na dumadaan sa dolyar. Marami po ngayon. Tinatawag, yan po yung trend na tinatawag na de-dollarization, mga kabansa. Diretsahan na. Kumbaga, ang Russia, rubles, diretso na sa yuan. Yuan, diretso na sa rubles. Hindi na ho dumadaan sa dolyar. Kaya ano ang latest na nangyari? Ito pong balitang ito. Chinese yuan overtakes US dollar. Can you imagine? Ito po ang video.
Last month, Argentina announced that they would start paying for imports using the Chinese yuan due to their shortage of dollars. And Brazil followed suit, announcing that it will allow companies.
China has escalated its economic rivalry with the United States, taking direct aim at the US dollar. In recent months, Chinese financial institutions have significantly increased their short positions against the American currency, betting on its decline. Estimates suggest that Chinese banks have allocated over $100 billion toward these positions, positioning themselves to profit from any devaluation of the dollar.
Countries are doing the same with what the reserve is to back up their currency. People will have confidence in their currency, not now only because they also have dollars, but because they also have yuan. And with the prospect of the yuan becoming a bigger factor connected to the biggest economy in the world within a few years, the pressure is on. No one knows how fast it will go. It will diminish the subsidy we get as a nation. It will squeeze American capitalism. It will be a boon to the Chinese capitalism in just the ways the dollar supremacy was for the United States. And one important point.
The strategy revolves around sophisticated financial instruments, particularly foreign exchange swaps, which allow Chinese banks to effectively short the dollar. This maneuver enables these banks to benefit from shifts in currency values. In practice, Chinese institutions swap yuan for dollars at a predetermined rate. Should the dollar depreciate by the contract's end, the American counterpart owes more yuan, generating gains for the Chinese bank. These activities have grown substantially, with state-run Chinese banks reportedly building up more than $100 billion in short positions by 2024. The tactic has been employed as part of broader efforts to stabilize the yuan without exhausting China's foreign reserves. This currency strategy is driven by the mounting pressure on the yuan, which has been weakened by both the Federal Reserve's hawkish policies and a cooling Chinese economy. By engaging in these swaps, Chinese banks have been able to secure returns during periods of market volatility, sometimes reaping returns of up to 6% for traders involved in these deals. In addition to foreign exchange swaps, Chinese banks are reportedly preparing to sell off US dollars in exchange for yuan, part of a broader intervention to support the Chinese currency. Despite these efforts, the yuan experienced its most significant annual decline against the dollar in decades, underscoring the challenging economic landscape facing China. At the heart of this aggressive financial strategy is China's central bank, seeking to defend the yuan amid a stronger dollar and slowing domestic growth. When Chinese banks exchange yuan for dollars, they reduce the amount of yuan in circulation, helping to stabilize its value.
Yan po kasi ang naging problema. Ito kasing Estados Unidos, mga kabansa, became preoccupied with geopolitics. At to preserve its hegemony or its being a superpower sa mundo, at tawag po dyan ay hegemonya, gumagawa po siya ng rule-based order. No? Yung rule-based order po ay hindi naman yon international law. No? Yung po ay international law from the interpretation of the United States. Bibigyan ko kayo ng example, mga kabansa. Yung sinabi noong 2003, no, na itong mga Middle Eastern countries need to be watched more carefully. Bakit? Dahil noong 2001, yung Twin Towers po dyan sa New York ay inatake ng dalawang eroplano at yung pangatlong eroplano naglanding sa Pentagon, yung pong Department of Defense ng Amerika, at doon yung isa naman ay napacrash doon sa forest ng Pennsylvania. Apat po yun na eroplano na yung pong napabagsak sa Pennsylvania was really intended for the White House. Can you imagine? Oh. Pero ano ang ating napag-alaman? Ito pala ay isang conspiracy lamang ng mga neo-colonial, neo-conservatives, no, mga kabansa, ng war economy ng Estados Unidos. Ito po ang military-industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s warned the world about. Na ang pinakamalaking industriya ng Amerika ay ang industriya ng gera. Kaya po, walang tigil ang Amerika kakikinig ng kaaway para may bumili at magpalit ng kanilang war equipment and material na tinatawag. At yan po, mga kabansa, in 2003, para magkaroon ng benta sa Middle East, ay nag-invento sila na merong weapons of mass destruction, WMD. Natatandaan nyo ba yun? Yung weapons of mass destruction na sinabi nila si Saddam Hussein ay merong at nagpamanufacture ang Iraq ng weapons of mass destruction, biological, chemical, at nuclear. Basta. No? So, yun ang ginamit nilang rason para atakin. They used that rule-based order para atakin ang Iraq. Doon natin nakita ang tremendous display of American weaponry. Bakit kailangan gamitin ang weaponry? Aba, ay pagkahuna wala ng military, ng mga missile, ng mga aeroplano, ng mga bomba. Ano ang mangyayari? Kailangan umorder uli. Ayun. So, kailangan mag-create ang Amerikano ng kaaway. At diyan naman, sumunod, nakaaway nila ang Afghanistan. Bakit? Dahil si Osama bin Laden, natatandaan nyo ba yung pinagbintangan nila na nag-organize ng pagtusok ng mga aeroplano sa Twin Towers sa New York? Ay dyan po kinukupkup sa Taliban, ng mga Taliban daw sa Afghanistan. So, mula Iraq, dinala nila sa Syria at sa Afghanistan ang gera, mga kabansa. And fast forward na tayo, lately, they had to stop the war in Afghanistan. And nabuhol naman sila rito sa war in Ukraine. Ayan, mga kabansa. Pero lagi na lamang pagkagagahulin sa pera ang Amerikano dahil sila ang foreign exchange, nagmamanage na foreign exchange, nagpiprint lamang sila ng perang papel, okay na sila. Pero dito sa pagpasok ng dollarization, mga kabansa, ang real value ng dollar ay bumababa dahil wala itong backup. At kaya nag-unload ang China ng a few more debt treasury bills. Binibenta niya na. Nag-unload na siya. Ayaw na niyang i-guarantee yung utang ng Amerika. Kabansa, dahil ang Amerika ay walang tigil ng paggawa ng gera. At ano ang ating natutunghayan ngayon, mga kabansa? Ito ang slide, mga kabansa. Ang gera sa Israel, sinimula ng atake ng Hamas, na may namatay ng mga 1,200 ng mga Hamas. Ang retaliation ng Israel Defense Forces was swift and brutal. Ang estimate po ngayon is anywhere between 40 to 110,000 na ang namamatay na Palestinians, men and karamihan, women and children. At dito, lately, magiging na explanation dito, they went overboard by killing the leader of Hezbollah. Dito naman sa kabila, ang Hezbollah po ay nakabase sa Lebanon. Para malaman natin ang base, ilatag natin dito sa video na ito.
Iran launched about 200 missiles at Israel Tuesday, filling the skies with sounds of sirens and explosions, and risking a wider war in the Middle East.
Obviously, this is a significant escalation by Iran, a significant event.
You've got three wars of attrition going on, one between Israel and Hamas, one between Israel and Hezbollah, and the main event, of course, which I'm afraid we're going to see more of, is the one between two states, between Israel and Iran.
Here's what led to Iran's latest attack on Israel, and what could happen next. In July, Israel killed Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in a strike after he attended the inauguration of Iran's new president in Tehran. And in September, the Israeli military also killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike on southern Beirut. Iran backs both Hamas and Hezbollah.
They responded because of the credibility problem that they have. Their main proxy, in whom they've invested billions of dollars, has taken a very serious hit.
The Israeli strike on Nasrallah followed weeks of intelligence operations and bombing campaigns targeting Hezbollah, including detonating thousands of pagers used by the group's members. This week, the Israeli military sent troops into Lebanon and said it had been conducting secret raids across the border for the past year. Iran had repeatedly promised a tough response to Israel's escalating attacks, but did not retaliate until Tuesday. Tensions had been building for months, In April, Iran launched its first direct attack on Israel from Iranian territory, with more than 300 drones and missiles.
You now have two attacks directly against Israel. The first broke a norm. The second could have done considerable damage. And it's for that reason that I think the Israelis cannot afford to create a new normal, so they will respond.
Some analysts said with its attack Tuesday, Iran was likely seeking to look tough, but not provoke a broad retaliation. The Pentagon said that Israel intercepted a majority of the missiles, and that there was minimal damage on the ground.
I think it was very serious. You can't launch 180 ballistic missiles in the general direction of urban population centers and assume that every one of them is going to be intercepted.
איראן עשתה הערב טעות גדולה, והיא תשלם על כך. המשטר באיראן לא מבין את נחישותנו להגן על עצמנו, ואת נחישותנו לגמול לאויבינו.
Israel didn't provide details on how or when it would respond.
There's serious talk now of the Israelis going after some of Iran's nuclear sites. I mean, can they do that? To use the Israeli expression, yes, perhaps they can mow the grass. They don't have the bunker busters or the firepower that the United States has. More conventionally, there's oil export facilities. There are any number of conventional military sites the Israelis can strike.
President Biden said the U.S. military actively supported Israel's defense Tuesday, and he's in discussions about a response.
Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel.
I can't see the United States participating offensively in what the Israelis are going to do. Defensively, yes. Battening down the hatches to protect its own forces, considering the possibility, should this escalate, of some kind of offensive action against Iran. But right now, I don't think you're going to see an Israeli-U.S. partnership in what the Israelis intend to do.
Iran promised a crushing response if Israel retaliates.
I think it's pushed us farther toward the point of an escalation that I think will be uncontrolled. I'm not predicting that we're going there. I don't believe in transformations, or inflection points or game changers. But I do believe this action today, in response to both the Hania and the Nasrallah hits, essentially brings us closer.
So there you go. Mga bansa, nagsimula sa Hamas, dito sa Gaza, tapos sa loob ng Israel, sa border, tapos ngayon nandito naman sa Hezbollah, sa kanan, mga kabansa. At nung una, patayin yung Hamas leader, nagpadala na ng mga rockets at saka, anong pangalan nito? Drones ang Iran. No? But that, kayang-kaya nung Iron Dome ng Israel. Gaganon yung mga tatamaan nung rockets, tatlong klase rockets yun eh. Tatlong klase yung rockets ng Israel to stop. Ang nangyari dito ngayon, tinadala ulit mga 200 na mga drones and rockets. No? Pero siningitan ng mga ballistic missile, mga kabansa. At saka yung hypersonic. Pinakababagal po na hypersonic ay 6,500 kilometers per hour ang takbo sa takbong Mach 5. Meron na po ngayon hypersonics na Mach 10. So, paano ma-intercept yun? Mga 12,000 kilometers per hour? Tapos yung hypersonic ko, pagdating sa taas, bababa yung secondary niya, mag-iiba-iba ng direksyon. Doon pa lamang malalaman kung paano ang pupuntahan. Yung ballistic ko is even faster kasi aakyat yun. Tapos yung baba nun, together with the weight of gravity, is even faster than the hypersonic missiles. Kaya yung Iron Dome po, Nagyayabang ang Israel na intercept daw nila 95%. Pero tatlo, at least 3 airfields nila ay sabog, kalahati ng F-35s nila, wasak. Hindi pa ito inaamin ng Israel. Iniwasan ang populated areas kaya walang masyado casualty reported, no? At sumabay na, bumalik na, nag-release na rin ng rockets at missiles ang Hezbollah from Lebanon, habang inaatake naman ng Israel ang Lebanon by land. Nag-release na rin ng Yemen, mga kabansa, Yemeni, yung mga Houthi, sumama na rin, nag-launch na rin. And I have unverified reports that Iran also has launched, I think, 3 missiles or something, but I have to verify that. So, what are we expecting dito sa Pilipinas? Let's bring the issue home. At dito ho sa article ni Rigoberto Tiklao noong September 27, mababasa natin na actually, U.S. missile system in Philippines provoking Cold War II arms race in Asia dahil napasok po noong April 17, 2024 ng Typhoon weapon system capable of launching a tomahawk. So while the administration of Marcos and Congress have been engrossed in pinning down a 30-year-old Chinese-Philippine offshore gaming operator, si Alice Go, and hunting down a religious leader and undertaking operations to demolish the Duterte charisma, yung religious leader po yun ay si Kibuloy, the Philippines has become so much of a U.S. puppet, sabi niya, that a U.S. mid-range missile system has been installed here, putting the country in the middle of an arms race in Asia. Ito ho yung operational range ng Tomahawk missile in this slide. No? Lagi natin pinalalabas ito to remind you na hindi lamang China and North Korea ang in danger of being attacked by this if we are able to put a Tomahawk missile in the Typhoon launcher na pinasok ng mga secretly ng Amerikano rito pero nabuko rin. Sa South, in danger ang Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. Sa West, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, at abot doon sa Myanmar, mga kabansa. So, hindi na po biro ito because the Tomahawk is capable of carrying nuclear warhead. At ito po has a superior GPS, mga kabansa, that can follow the terrain even at a distance only of 30 meters na taas lamang. Pwede ho siya maglaro pa ganun-ganon, weaving through the typology of the terrain. No? Not the typology, the topology of the terrain, mga kabansa. And hindi matidetect ng radar because masyadong mababa ang kanyang lipat. No. Ano ho ang problema dito? Well, if we have an offensive weapon system dito sa atin, it's in violation of the Constitution because we are not supposed to adopt a war as a national policy, mga kabansa. Pangalawa, we are not supposed to host offensive weapons directed at our neighbors. Kaya tayo ngayon, parang paraya. Ayaw kong makialam ang mga ASEAN neighbors natin sa atin. And ito ho, lately, last week lamang, mga kabansa, ay nag-launch ng Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, DF-31 ang China. At ito ho ang, tingnan nyo, dumaan ho yan sa tuktok ng Pilipinas At doon sa tuktok ng Pilipinas, nandoon yung Typhoon with missile system. No? At yan po ay sumabog dito sa bandang kanan, lampas ng konti ng Hawaii. Ito po yan, pinag-uusapan natin sa video.
On September 25, 2024, China's People's Liberation Army Rocket Force PLARF launched an intercontinental ballistic missile carrying a dummy warhead into the Pacific Ocean. This event marked a significant shift in China's approach, as it was the first time in over 40 years that China conducted a public ICBM test over international waters. But why now, and why this specific location? The missile was launched at 8:44 a.m. Beijing time, reaching a designated area in the high seas of the Pacific Ocean. The Chinese Defense Ministry described this test as part of its routine annual training and assured that it was not aimed at any particular country or target. However, the strategic nature of the launch, its timing, location, and the type of missile used has led experts to believe that it was much more than just a routine test. The launch site and trajectory were not publicly disclosed, but analysts speculate that the ICBM was most likely fired from a site in Hainan or a nearby region. Based on its range and capabilities, the missile might have been the Dongfeng 41 DF-41, China's most advanced ICBM with a reach of up to 15,000 kilometers, 9,300 miles. This range puts nearly all of the United States within its striking distance. What makes this test even more intriguing is the transparency or lack thereof surrounding it. While China did notify relevant countries in advance, it refrained from revealing specific details about the flight path and impact zone. This ambiguity leaves a lot of room for interpretation and speculation, sparking concerns about the message China is trying to send. So what's the takeaway? China's test is a demonstration of its growing military might and a signal to the world that it has the technology and readiness to defend its interests. But beyond the technicalities, this test has set off alarm bells, raising questions about the balance of power in the region and how other nations, especially the United States, will respond. The ICBM test was not an isolated event. It came amidst a backdrop of heightened military activities and increasing regional tensions. China and Russia were already conducting joint naval exercises in waters close to Japan and the US. It had been ramping up its military presence in the South China Sea. This test, therefore, served as a bold reminder to the United States and its allies that China's missile capabilities are not to be underestimated. The timing of the test is also crucial. It coincided with the UN General Assembly Week, drawing global attention and highlighting China's willingness to flex its muscles in front of the international community. By choosing to go public with this test, China made a clear statement its missile technology is not only advancing but also ready to be showcased. For the United States, this test poses a direct challenge. It serves as a reminder that any intervention in a potential conflict involving Taiwan or the South China Sea could have severe consequences. The test was a signal to Washington that China is capable of striking back if provoked, and it has the means to project power far beyond its immediate borders. Regional allies such as Japan and the Philippines are also on high alert. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi expressed concerns about the lack of communication and transparency from Beijing regarding the test. The Philippines, too, noted that the missile's path crossed near its territory, raising fears of accidental confrontations or miscalculations. What's important to understand here is that this test is not just about showcasing military hardware. It's about psychological warfare and strategic messaging. By publicly testing an ICBM, China is telling the world that it's ready to stand its ground, making the cost of any potential conflict prohibitively high.
Ayan mga kabansa, no? Nabanggit ang Pilipinas. Pinakita pa yung lawag, mga kabansa. Lawag, hindi man ho EDCA base yan. Ang mga EDCA bases lamang po ay siyam. Pero according to Jaime Marcos, 25 areas in the Philippines are possible targets of Chinese hypersonic missile attack. Pakinggan po natin ang kapatid ng Pangulo.
Aminin natin ang problema talaga dahil sa tingin ng China, talagang kumampi na tayo sa kalaban nila. Nagbigay tayo ng 17 base militar sa pakiwari nila, yung EDCA sites. Talaga mainit ang ulo nila. Natatakot talaga ako habang umiinit diyan sa West Philippine Sea, may nakita ako na plano ng China na gagamitin yung hypersonic missile. Hindi naman nila iniisip na lulusob dito sa Pilipinas yung katakot-takot na army nila, mga navy nila. Hindi ganoon. Ang plano, air. At ang plano yung hypersonic missile at nakatakda na yung 25 na target nila. Kitang-kita na. Ang sabi ng US, hindi daw nila kaya labanan yung hypersonic missile. Mas lalo akong ninervyos kasi akala ko kapag missile, meron yung ibang bansa yung tinatawag na Iron Dome, hindi makapasok yung missile. Kapag hypersonic daw, kayang-kaya pumasok. Ganyan lang kadali, durog daw. Ano bang klase yon? Kasi sa pagbabasa natin, may mga Brahmin missile na sa Batanes, pati sa Subic. So yung dalawang yun ang uunahin kasama ng Ilocos kasi may mga live fire na balikatan. Katakot nga Ano ba yan? 25 hindi biro-biro yun.
Unang-una po ulitin natin, yung nilaunch kanina ng China na umabot lampas na Hawaii, yung po ay hindi DF-41, yung po ay DF-31. Ang meaning po ng DF ay Dongfeng. Yung DF-41 po, lampas na yan ng California, lampas na yan ng West Coast. Abot na ho ng East Coast yan sa New York at pwede pa magpasabog yan sa Atlantic Ocean na lampas na ng Amerika. Ganyan po, nakakatakot na ang sitwasyon ngayon sa mundo. No? At pangalawa, sinubukan daw ng mga Amerikano na sundan ng jet plane. Ang jet plane po, Mach 2, twice the speed of sound lamang ang pwedeng takbuhin. At pag siya nag-launch ng missile, pinakamabilis na missile na may launch ng isang aeroplano ng Amerika ay yung Arrow na Mach 5 lamang. Kaya hindi na-intercept yung Chinese missile dahil alam nyo ba kung gaano kabilis? Mga kabansa, Mach 10 yung DF-31. At yan po ang nandito sa Chinese menu of missiles that can take down any threat in the Philippines, mga kabansa. Any threat dito sa Northern Luzon in 3 minutes at sa Mindanao 7 minutes. Mamili na kayo dito sa mga nakalinya na ito, mga kabansa. So, ano ang ating makikita rito? Pwedeng pagpilian ng short-range ballistic missile up to 1,000 kilometers, medium-range ballistic missile up to 3,000 kilometers, lampas na ho yun ng Pilipinas. At kung meron pa mga barko-barko dyan, itong intermediate range ballistic missile that can go up to 5,500 missiles, kilometers, mga kabansa. At may menu ng pagpipilian depende sa kung ano ang target. Kaya nga, nagbabase rito sa Pilipinas, ang Amerika, mga kabansa, dahil wala nang silbi yung mga aircraft carrier nila. Sino pa makakalapit sa China with all this missile capability? China lamang po ang may rocket force, the branch ng kanilang plan, People's Liberation Army Rocket Force. So, oras na, mga kabansa, para tayo ay mag-isip-isip. Namnamin natin itong kanta na ito.
May bulong, dinggin mo, ihip ng ating panahon. May sigaw, dinggin mo, at ubos na ang oras mo.
na po tayong magpaligoy-ligoy pa. Huwag na tayong magpatumpik-tumpik pa. Let's get serious. Oras na para baguhin natin ang ating landas. Kung tayo papunta sa digmaan, lumayo tayo dyan. Pumunta tayo sa kaiibsa, ikauunlad ng tayo ng ating mga kababayan. Huwag tayong lumapit man lang dyan sa mga naglalakihang mga puwersa na baka tayo ay mahigo pa ng hangin ng gera. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagtangkilik. Ito po si Ado Paglinawan. Nagpapaalam na for now. Remember, subscribe to Ang Maestro. Subscribe to the Katipunan channel. Thank you very much.
Get ready. Get ready.